Shut my front door.
Hello, everybody. People are trickling in. Welcome. Let's give it a minute or so here before we get started. All right, welcome back. This is our last webinar for 2020, so we're excited to be doing this. This is something new we started this year, and we've had a great time doing it and had a lot of great feedback. So we will continue this into 2021. This last webinar is on cybersecurity and steps that you can take to make yourself more secure and make your digital footprint more secure. So the actual presentation should be 30 to 45 minutes, and as usual, we'll kind of take questions at the end, which we expect to take about 15-20 minutes. So as always, we encourage engagement. We also wanted to wish everyone happy holidays. It's been a very stressful year, a very difficult year for everyone, and we know a lot of you attending this webinar have had a tough year. So we wish you happy holidays. We want you to stay safe. If you are traveling, do it safely, be smart. We're very close here to everyone, hopefully having the vaccine within the next 6 to 9 months. So, we'll keep charging, and if you need anything from us, of course, as you know, we're available. So let's go ahead and get started. So 2 seconds, that's how frequently someone becomes the victim of cyber theft in the world. So this is a rampant problem. And as many of you know who've been looking at the news recently, there was probably the biggest breach ever committed against the US government and US citizens that it's been reported was a foreign actor, probably Russia. Very sophisticated attack that happened over a number of months. And so I think it's just a good reminder of how important it is to have what we call good cyber hygiene. And that's, none of us are cybersecurity experts, but what we're going to try to do today is teach you some of the fundamentals and basics of being cybersecurity aware, so that you can better protect yourself and your family. Because this is a real issue, and it's not going, the cyber crime is not going to slow down. It's probably only going to pick up as the world becomes more and more interconnected. Most likely, all of our information for anyone who's on this webinar has been exposed through the various massive cyber breaches that have occurred. Most recently, it was the malicious code that was inserted into SolarWinds, which is a big, cybersecurity company that I think all Fortune 500 companies were using. Very sophisticated attack that was ultimately uncovered by FireEye, who was one of the victims in it. But before that, there was Marriott. They had 500 million guests where emails, names, phone numbers, addresses were exposed. Equifax, back in 2017, the breach of most Americans, and then of course Yahoo had 3 billion accounts compromised. So the information, your information is likely out there, passwords, names. So what you want to try to do is just protect your information and your digital footprint as best you can, and that's what we're really going to be talking about today. So right now, most people have a low cybersecurity knowledge and have a fairly low security. If we can implement most of what we learn today in this webinar, we're going to try to move everyone to this top rightmost quadrant where knowledge is higher and higher level of security. And it does require some time and effort on your part, but we think it's well worth it. So the first part, we're going to discover your cybersecurity score. And wherever you are, it's fine. We're just, the whole goal of today is to move you up, move your score up. Part two is we're going to learn cybersecurity rules. And then part three is we're going to put a plan together to take some action. I think this is a good time to mention, I think, an effective analogy that you can think about. Think of your digital footprint, your logins to various websites, your email, your credit cards, your bank accounts online, if you're part of any social media, all of that is your digital footprint. You need to think of that as your house, okay? With your house at night or when you leave, you lock the house and hopefully you have some sort of a security system. The way to think of your digital footprint is if somebody sends you an email, imagine that person is ringing on the doorbell to your house. You don't just open the door and let them in, right? You look and you see who's there. Were you expecting this person? So think of kind of a password, right, to one of your digital accounts as you locking the door, and think of a backup to that, something called, we'll talk a lot about, but dual factor or multi-factor authentication as the alarm system to your house. So, but that is the type of kind of vigilance and mindfulness that you want to have today, in this day and age where, when you log into something or you're on a website, we're going to show you where you want to look, what you want to be mindful of, so that you're less likely to be, compromised than someone who's not aware of these basic things. So today, we're going to focus on 10 threats every person in business faces and how to fight them. So let's first go through your score. What you want to do here, and you can do it on a sheet of paper or just in your head, is by each of these questions, notate a yes or a no. Every yes gets 5 points, every no gets 0, and then you're going to add up your score. So we'll give you a minute or so, a couple minutes to go through this, and I'm going to read through these with you. So you have essentially one email address that you use exclusively for online accounts, banking, credit card, payment services, investment accounts, and nothing else. So in other words, one email for all your personal communications and everything, and then another email for just financial stuff. Yes or no to that? Do you have two-step verification turned on for your email and online financial accounts? What that means is not only do you have a password, but once you put in your password, the site prompts you to enter in a code that either is texted to you or emailed to you, and you then have to put in that code in order to get into that account. Put a yes or a no there. Can you spot the difference between free public Wi-Fi and secure public Wi-Fi? Both could be free, but whether it's a dangerous free public Wi-Fi or a secure free public Wi-Fi, can you spot the difference? Yes or no? Do you understand how to tell if your Wi-Fi network is vulnerable to hackers and how to boost the network security? Okay, so anyone who has Wi-Fi in the house, right, it's either secure or it's not secure, and you need to know how to check that. Whenever any money leaves your bank accounts or your credit cards are charged, are you alerted to the transaction? Yes or no? Do you have complete control over your credit files at the 3 big credit bureaus, Equifax, TransUnion, and Experian? And by complete control, what I mean is, have you frozen those credit files? Put on a credit freeze, yes or no? I have confirmed with the credit bureaus that my minor children have not been victims of identity theft and frozen their credit files. So that's only applicable if you have minor children, yes or no there. Updated antivirus software on your computers and devices, yes or no. You make sure your computer and devices have the most up-to-date software programs, including operating system, right, Windows, browsers, if you use Google Chrome, Microsoft Office, iTunes, your virus, your router, Adobe. Yes or no to that? You have a system for ensuring that in the event you're subject to a ransomware phishing attack, that you have your files essentially backed up so you don't have to pay a fee to get access back to your computer files. So give yourself 5 points for each question you answered yes. Go ahead and add those up and get to a raw score. And again, we're just gonna, for right now, we're just gonna get that raw score, and the whole point is we're gonna try to move that up. If you're yes across the board, then you're way ahead of the game. So now let's talk about some of the new cybersecurity rules you want to be aware of. These are the 3 big picture mindsets that I want you thinking about. One is secrecy, the other omniscience, and the third is mindfulness. And we'll talk about what each of these mean in the context of cybersecurity mindset. So first idea, key idea number 1, adopting a new level of secrecy can boost your security and cyber confidence. One, I think, example of this is the email example. So to the extent you use one email exclusively for financial accounts, that would be kind of a higher level of secrecy. And in that email, right, you wouldn't want to have your first and last name or first initial and last name. It should be something that really can't identify any part of you personally. And then the other email obviously is for just normal personal communication. The other point to add there with for your email for financial accounts is passwords. I attended with Jennifer from our office a Fidelity meeting back in 2019, and one of the speakers there was talking about cybersecurity. And Fidelity is the only private sector company that has a person supposedly in the FBI field office who kind of helps coordinate with them on cybercrime. And the thing he said is the most danger that's out there is people have very simple passwords, right? And the reason it makes sense, right? We all think about it because if you have there's so many passwords you need. And if you make them too complex, then you won't remember them, and it's a huge aggravation. But most passwords that are just regular words with a 1 or a 1 exclamation point, those are very easily hacked. I think in 17 minutes, 1,000 passwords can be hacked. So you have to remember that these cyber criminals are operating kind of all hours of the day throughout the world. And they have very sophisticated algorithms and code that run to essentially break these passwords. And they're always looking and always doing it. So a strong and unique password is really important. So here's one way to think about a strong and unique password. Obviously, any straightforward word would not be an example of a strong password. There's a suggestion here that I actually found very helpful. Let's say you use a mnemonic password example. So Jack and Joe went up the hill to fetch a pail of water. You can take each of the first letters from each of these words, and that becomes the password. So capital J, then you use the symbol for and, another J for Jill, the W went up, right, arrow up, the hill, TH, to fetch, TF, and then at, basically a pail of water. And you can do this with anything. If you have a saying you like to say, you can basically convert that into a pretty sophisticated, strong password. Another thing to do, I know with 4J, we have to change our passwords every 90 days. So just as a way to be more secure. So one thing that I try to do is whatever the goal is for that 3 months, whether it's an exercise goal, a diet goal, just something that I'm doing internally, you write that down and then you convert that to something that's sophisticated. So run every day, a very simple saying could be converted into a pretty complex password. Another thing you can do, the diceware method, diceware.com. You essentially take a die and you roll it 5 times and you record the number each time you roll it, and that becomes a 5-digit number, and you do that 4 different times. And then you go to diceware.com and you look up that 5-digit number and it converts to a word, and those kind of 4 or 5 words strung together become your random password. And then the other point here, and a lot of people talk about this, is, okay, so I have all these strong passwords, but how in the world am I going to remember them? So there are application sites that are essentially called password managers. An example of that is something like a Dashlane or 1Password. You have one master password that's very strong and complex, and that's essentially what you remember, all you have to remember, and that stores and holds all your passwords for all your accounts. Obviously, the risk there is if someone got in there, they would have access to all your passwords, but conventional wisdom amongst cyber experts is having strong passwords for all of your different sites, and then having a master password that's also strong with dual factor is better than just having kind of okay passwords throughout across the board that you just remember. And so something to be aware of, that's out there and available if it's just too hard for you to remember all these passwords. Okay. Another rule, enabling 2-step verification on your email and financial accounts. Fidelity allows this. All the banks now that I'm aware of allow this. Your email system will allow it. Essentially, you will have a password to log in to your accounts, but then that password will essentially get you to the point where it said a verification code has been sent to you. So it will either be texted to you or emailed to you, or sometimes there's an app that you can use to actually provide a token that changes every 30 seconds, and you put in that token. But this is very important. I would say if there's one thing you do, if you only have time to make one change from this webinar, do this. Because, right, to the extent your password gets cracked, this adds a much more difficult layer for a hacker to crack. I'm not saying it's impossible. Obviously, if you have foreign national operators hacking into very senior government agencies, anything is possible. But this is going to make you much more less likely, I would say, to cybercrime than someone who doesn't have this. So keep your eye out. It'll be either called 2-step verification or dual factor verification or multi-factor verification. It's all the same thing. It's adding another layer of protection. Okay, using Wi-Fi with extreme caution. We go to Starbucks now, you go to a park, you go to any sort of public setting or gathering, and there's probably going to be Wi-Fi available. In fact, a lot of times your phone says, do you want to join such and such free Wi-Fi? You have to be able to know the difference between public Wi-Fi and secure Wi-Fi. So the secure Wi-Fi will have something that looks like this, like a lock, okay? Public Wi-Fi will not have that. And what you want to be really careful of is joining something that doesn't have that secure connection, because if hackers are on there as well, they can get into your system, they can get into your computer. One example of this, and I won't name any names, but we have someone that we used to work with as a kind of a professional network, as part of our professional network, and he was on vacation. He was in the Caribbean, and my recollection, this is years ago, but my recollection is he was using public Wi-Fi, and what the hacker did was they created essentially another public Wi-Fi that looked like the legitimate one but wasn't, and the individual clicked on that public Wi-Fi, and we ultimately, an email went to one of us, one of the 4Js, that essentially was an invoice, person's name, an invoice to us as a link, and you had to click on it. We luckily, were able to not click on it because we called him, but it very easily, if we weren't being very attentive, could have clicked on that, which could have, been an issue. So that's just an example of how sophisticated and prevalent this is. You probably all have stories where something like this has happened. Again, with questions, I see questions coming in. That's fantastic. We will get to them, but I'm just going to wait till the end so we don't kind of interrupt the flow here. All right, let me just make sure. Okay, here we are. All right, so if you have a router that provides your home Wi-Fi network, you want to make sure that that's secure to keep your hackers out. So I'll go through this with you now. What you want to do to check to make sure you have a secure wireless router is if you click on the bottom right of your computer where you see the Wi-Fi signal, and then you click on properties to whichever Wi-Fi thing you're connected to, and you scroll down to properties, you'll see something that says security type. What you want to see there is WPA2 or WPA, basically WPA2 or WPA3. You don't want to see WEP. WEP means it is not encrypted. WPA 1, 2, or 3 means it is encrypted. The other thing that a lot of people don't do is they use just the default router username and password that was installed by the company that originally put it there. You definitely want to change that to your own username and an encrypted, or excuse me, a strong password. If you try to do that now, remember any device that's connected to Wi-Fi in your house, whether it be a TV, computer, cell phone, you'll have to reconnect that with a new password. So just be prepared to do that with all the different systems. And then if you do have an old router, you want to follow the user manual. You can go to the website in the back router to update the firmware to make sure that that's up to date. Key idea number 2, completing certain actions can help you achieve financial cyber omniscience and thwart fraud. Right, obviously we can't be everywhere all the time, but the idea is to use technology to leverage technology to create that more omniscient presence. And the way to do that is to set up alerts with your bank accounts, credit cards, or any charges or withdrawals. You get an email or a text. So this can be a little bit annoying, but it makes sure that, if your spouse uses a credit card, or if you use a credit card, you'll immediately get a notification saying the merchant and the amount. And that can really help you to the extent one of your credit cards is stolen and being used, right? You're going to be aware, wait a minute, I'm not, no one just charged something $100 at Apple. That doesn't make sense. Or you call your spouse and say, hey, did you just buy this? No. Okay, something's going on. Let me call the credit card company. So this can usually be done online through settings, just turn on notifications, or you can contact your bank or credit card company for help there. So that creates kind of you being more aware and omniscient in terms of what's happening with your accounts. Another thing you can do to protect yourself is freeze your credit and protect minor children. So I actually did this back when Equifax was breached, but you can, at TransUnion, Experian, and Equifax, you can sign up for a credit freeze at all 3 of those bureaus. It used to be there was like a $10 fee, but now with what's happened, it's free. And essentially you will get a PIN. Do not lose that PIN. Because when you want to unlock your credit, when you want to buy a car or you're purchasing a home and they need to check your credit file, you'll need that PIN to unlock it. But what the freezes do is the highest level of security. Nobody can check your credit. Like if they go to check your credit, the credit bureau will not allow them because it's frozen. So this provides a very, very strong level of protection. And I would say order priority, this would be number 2, right after the dual factor. And another thing you need to do, in addition to freezing the credit, is each of the credit bureaus allow you to pull your credit report once a year for free. And I would take full advantage of that and look and make sure, okay, all of the liabilities, the revolving lines of credit I have, those in fact are mine. The amounts look correct. The names look correct. You just want to get in the habit. All of this is a habit, but it's just so necessary because 10 years ago, this probably, it was still a risk, but today it's almost mandatory. It's just like being aware of what's happening with your spending. This has got to be kind of a part of your habit so that you make sure you're as protected as possible. If you do have minor children, it's a little bit more laborious, but 500,000 kids a year now, their identity is being hacked, Social Security, and people are taking out credit in their name. You have to send in a letter to each of the credit bureaus with the birth certificate of the child, the social, your license, your address, and basically ask for them to manually search their credit files, or search their socials to see if any credit's been taken out in their kids' names. So that is probably the most time-consuming step of any of the action steps you'll have to take. And again, it only applies if you have minor kids. Key idea number 3 is having a mindfulness when it comes to cybersecurity. And this is really when something like an email comes in, right? You need to be mindful. Even if it's from someone that you know, you still want to be careful, because what hackers will do is they'll either look at a company page or your social profile, or if they get into your email, they'll see other contacts, and then they'll create an email with the same name, except they'll change one letter. So it looks like you're getting an email from that person, and it has some link, and then you click on it, and the ransomware is then installed on your computer. So you want to be very careful with email. We'll talk about that. But another easy thing you can do is just make sure your software is on auto update always. This is by far going to be one of the easiest things you can do. Your Microsoft Windows, make sure that's on auto update. If you want to know if you have that, you just go in the bottom left-hand side of your screen and you just type in updates, and you can go to check for updates. And then you can see Windows updates, and you can see whether, yep, you're up to date yesterday at 7/11, and you can see, because of this, the arrow is going in circular fashion, that is on it's on an auto update schedule. And you do this. You should do the same thing for Microsoft Office. You should do the same thing for Adobe, right? You check them, make sure they're on auto update. If not, you can turn that on. And then you also want to have some sort of antivirus software. So on this computer, McAfee, but there are other ones out there, but you want to make sure you have that, and that's consistently scanning your computer for viruses. Okay, this is a big one. Back up your file so you never pay ransomware extortion. That was what I talked about. If you click on a link, I'm sure you've heard stories where if you click on the link, your computer essentially locks up and you have to pay the hacker money, usually cryptocurrency, in order to unlock your files. So you want to have your files backed up ideally in 3 places. 1, your computer. 2, you can back it up to an external hard drive. And then 3, the cloud, which you can use iCloud, you can use Google Cloud, Microsoft has a cloud, I think Windows has a cloud. There's a lot of options out there, and you should back up everything, at least the important stuff, so that if they lock it up, you don't have to pay the ransomware, because you have all your data backed somewhere else that you can obtain it from. In addition to having things backed up, at 4J, we actually have the ability, because we use a third-party kind of computer provider, is if somehow one of our laptops were stolen, or cell phones, they have the ability to remotely wipe that device completely. So that's just an extra backup. So there may be services you can engage if you want to go that far, but certainly just backing up an external hard drive and in the cloud is a really good course of action to have. So for emails, right? Most people get hacked through emails. And again, think of this like someone knocking or ringing the doorbell at your front door. You don't just let them in. So this is the 10-second rule. I realize this may seem cumbersome or laborious at times, but what you want to do is you want to look at the message. Okay, who is it from? And what you can do there is, if you're in an email and you just hold your mouse over whoever the sender is, it will show you the exact email address. Look at that email address, make sure it looks legitimate. Something will trigger if it doesn't look right. Now, if it looks like it's from a legitimate person, but the message, other parts of the message seem odd, there could be one letter that's changed. If one letter's changed, I would immediately delete it. Subject line test, right? Sender test, greetings test. Do they say your name or do they say sir or madam? Sir, madam, right, is generally a bad sign. A lot of times there could be either an attachment or something like the grammar in the email seems off, the spacing seems off, or again, with attachment, don't ever just click on a link. You always want to hover over that link. And what you want to see is HTTPS. The S stands for secure. So that you know that the link that is attached there is at least a secure link, okay? So again, most of the time, I think if you take a little bit of time and you do those steps where you do the hover over and you look at it, you will be fine. But sometimes these things are fairly sophisticated. So you just want to make sure that you take your time with when emails are coming in, and be very cautious when you have to click on links, because that's how the ransomware gets installed. One thing that we do with 4J is we have essentially our cybersecurity company that we work with. They send phishing emails to all four of us on an ongoing basis to essentially make sure that we are being cautious. So far, no one's clicked on one, but if that does happen, basically it's a learning lesson. So that's just something that we do in addition to kind of the other cybersecurity protocols we take to make sure that we're on top of our game. So we just wanted to share that so you knew. Right, with the email inspect the link, you'll see HTTPS. That means it is secure and safe to open, okay? And you can again hover over a link or URL to determine what the link is or what the email address is that's being sent from. Okay, part 3, obviously take action. So here, basically, we want you to, because this is so important, we want something good to come out of this other than just, oh, that was interesting. So set a deadline for yourself. Realize the holidays are coming up, so timing's not great, but set some deadline. Write down the top 3 things that you're going to take action on and sign it. And better yet, if you want to go back to the cybersecurity score and go through each of those and go through them one by one and look into each of your credit files and creating another email address, that's even better. But I think to start with, just list the top 3 that you want to do, sign it, so okay, I'm gonna make sure I take this action. So Jamie and Jeff, I know, are on as well as panelists. I don't know if they have any additional stories they want to share or examples that I may not have mentioned, but obviously they should feel free to do that now. And then also, I don't know if there's any questions that have come in. Okay, so somebody asked, how safe is putting passwords in a Excel spreadsheet? Not very. I realize that that's a very common way to do it, but the best course of action would be to do one of these password managers and follow kind of the prompts and store your passwords there, right? Because if someone got into your computer, it's very easy to access that Excel file.
Yeah, so on that question, they do say password protected Excel spreadsheet. So I guess I'll add, if the computer is password protected and the Excel spreadsheet inside is password protected, obviously that's better than writing it down on a sheet of paper and putting it in your desk drawer. But yeah, again, any type of security that we take, there's always going to be someone out there that's going to be able to beat it. The key is to putting as many levels of protections, including passwords, in place. So, if the password is Excel, for example, right? That could be pretty simple. But if it uses a combination of upper and lowercase letters, numbers, and then special characters, that's going to make it more secure. I'll add to where the client was, because I remember the story in detail. They were in, the client was not client, but associate was in Mexico, and they were at a pool, and I believe they were staying at a Hilton. And so when they looked for the available Wi-Fi, it said Cabo Hilton Pool, right? And sometimes hotels do that where they have multiple locations that the public Wi-Fi was on. So he was there by the pool, opened up his laptop computer, and then someone else likely was at the pool with their laptop computers that set up this kind of public Wi-Fi. And what they did was they then accessed his email, accessed the contacts within his email, and then used that information to then send us an invoice, which we didn't expect an invoice. We looked at it in more detail and were able to stop it. But that's how sophisticated these kind of, that's just another type of phishing, right? It's getting someone to log into or open up something that they shouldn't be in. Got another question on, do you have any advice that is specific to foreign travel? Obviously, foreign travel is going to, enter even more risks into the equation. I guess if it's logging into a Wi-Fi, always check with the hotel or the restaurant to make sure that it is secure. There are ways to determine the type of security, like Josh showed. If you click on kind of the Wi-Fi bars in the lower right, you can tell what type of security is being used. Is it WEP, WEP, which is outdated, or is it WPA2 or WPA3? That's a much more secure type. But I would just say, I mean, obviously look at your surroundings. What country you're in? Is it known for higher levels or more sophisticated methods of hacking? Is it, a restaurant? I wouldn't feel secure in a restaurant in, you know, France, for example. I'd feel much more secure at a hotel or at a business location. But just be very careful with any type of Wi-Fi that you access, because that is how they will then get into your computer. And obviously, if you have a laptop with you, if you have a device, use very, very sophisticated, at least 8 keys or 8 letters, combination numbers and special characters as part of your password. And then we'd recommend encrypting your device. We looked earlier because all of our laptops are encrypted, our home desktops are encrypted. It's 8 sections of 6 characters, so it's literally 48 keys, and that's what makes it not entirely preventable for a bad actor to get into, but extremely, extremely difficult when it has that many keys. And if you use Windows 10, it's a system called BitLocker. So if you just go into the lower left corner, where Josh went to type here to search for updates.
Yep, right here.
Yep, you would then just search on BitLocker and then manage BitLocker, and then there you can enable BitLocker, and that will help secure and encrypt the device.
Another idea that you could have for international travel, if you just wanted to try to use secure Wi-Fi, is you could use your phone as a secure to generate the secure Wi-Fi. If you're trying to get on with your laptop, for example, what you have to do is you just go to your settings and then you go to personal hotspot, and then you click on, basically, they're going to give you a random password, Apple will, and then you enter that into the Wi-Fi. And so then you're actually using your phone as the Wi-Fi signal, which is going to be safer than joining kind of any public Wi-Fi. So obviously you'd have to have international travel plan to get service, but that would be the best way to do it.
I was going to say what they may be able to do is to get a SIM card from the local cellular company when you go abroad. I know when my sister-in-law comes here from Italy, she always gets like a SIM card that she just puts into her phone. that sets her up with self-service here.
Does anyone have any questions kind of on what just happened with the Russian hack? Because that was a very sophisticated attack that was employed. That was, my understanding is, by far the biggest hack that has occurred. And basically what they did, to kind of give you a sense as to how sophisticated this is, and we don't understand it at a deep level, we're not cyber engineers, but big picture is they inserted innocuous code into SolarWinds, which is a cyber security company itself that basically every Fortune 500 company uses. They inserted innocuous code back in October of 19. And then they waited until March of 2020 to then insert malicious code. And essentially the malicious code and the innocuous code kind of paired up and met at that time, which essentially then got them into the system. But what's even more sophisticated is, I think the number of companies using the code was 600,000, but the number of companies that they actually wanted to target, or agencies, was only a couple hundred. And so it was extremely difficult to detect because they did it over time frame. They started with innocuous code, and then they only targeted kind of specific companies. And so it was very hard to track. And if FireEye, who was exposed, hadn't been as open about it, I think there would have been my understanding is there would have been a much bigger issue that we've had. But they came out immediately and said, we detected this, we were a victim of this, and that's been really helpful to a lot of the other victims and to the government.
Hey, Josh, I apologize if this is something you already covered, but I did want to add, if we ever receive an email from a client, a fax from a client asking us to send out funds, that request will always be personally verified by one of the four of us over the phone or in person. And I think that's a big differentiator between a smaller firm like 4J Wealth and a larger firm like Vanguard or USAA. When they receive a request like that, they can call up and question, ask 3 questions, but they're not going to know your voice. They're not going to know your particular situation, and that's one of the reasons why we have that policy. Is it always needs to be personally verified.
Yeah, that's a great point. Is there another question there, Jamie, or is it?
Yeah, it was just, would the presentation be available later?
Okay.
And Jeff has answered that.
All right. Well, it looks like if there aren't any more questions, we can conclude a little bit early so everyone can get to lunch. And if anyone has follow-up questions that are more personal, feel free to email us. But we think we are in a unique position, one, just as your financial advisors, to better protect, having an extra layer of security by having us manage your accounts, because it's a further step removed. But then we're also in a position to provide, I think, timely guidance on how you can better prepare yourself to protect against these cyber crimes, because they're happening all the time. They're trying to get in all the time. And so by doing these things, you just protect yourself that much better. No one's 100% secure. The idea here is we just want to be as prepared as possible.
I just wanted to add, happy holidays, everyone. Stay safe.
Yes. Happy holidays. Thank you
Happy holidays.
so much. Good to see everybody. Bye-bye.